Well, here's that video I was talking about at the end of the last one where I said I was gonna, come back and try to give some more thoughts about this whole, shooting in Beach, Virginia. Um, I'm gonna get to that, but like I said, there was a specific mug I wanted to be using for, my coffee this particular time around. It's one I bought to support a comedy site I used to be somewhat involved with many years ago when I first moved into my apartment here called Inventing Situations. Basically, what Inventing Situations, or IS for short, was and actually still is a TV and movie captioning site, based on an idea, from the mid 90s that originally, from what I understand, started on the Sci Fi Channel's Dominion website back in the mid 90s. That was. Eventually given a Mystery Science Theater theme when they picked the show up, called Caption This. And the whole idea was that that we were given, still images from various, movies and, television shows and whatnot, that would, show up on the Sci Fi Channel. And we were allowed to, write, silly little, uh, captions for them. And I've actually seen several, iterations of the idea since then. One of which was, the aforementioned, Inventing Situations, uh, which was kind of modeled after the, Sci-Fi Channel version, except the people running that, uh, had a broader variety of stuff. And for a while, what they did is they had a cafe press shop where they sold things like this mug to help, pay for the website. Um, and even though I wasn't necessarily an IS fan, another version that I actually did participate more in was, called Glitterrock's Cap Page Board, which has been down for a couple of years now because the fella running that went through, had a bunch of personal stuff, that he went through, um, for 4 or 5 years ago, and eventually came to the conclusion that it was time to move on to other things, which I understand and kind of need to do myself. Um, but there was like a message board where you could, on Glitterrock's site, where you could leave your captions for whatever you were doing. And then there was also an archive site that had 20 some years worth of captions involved. And I also have a mug that I personally made from, well, it wasn't necessarily the site specific thing, but it was sort of a commemorative thing for my own work there. But that'll be for another time. But the reason I've chosen this one is that, the one thing that Mystery Science Theater fans in general, and captioneers or cappers like myself, in particular, tend to do is we, when we're involved in this, we're essentially sitting down and reconsidering and rethinking all the these visual media that we're consuming, and maybe taking a minute to interpret them in different ways. And I think this inventing situations one I've got here, even though I never really participated in that specific site, which I think I will put in the link, or in the description, since it's still an active site. Um, even though it doesn't get a lot of you know users anymore. But I'll put it in there so they can kind of get an idea of what it was all about. Um, but in order to kind of explain my ideas on this, I'm going to have to you could say invent some situations, to get through this. Anyway, this is one of those things where this would have been Friday, May 31st, if I remember the date correctly. There was this, big, shooting in Virginia Beach, Virginia Beach, Virginia, where this, I guess the guy was, a city engineer with the city of Virginia Beach who had put in his, 2 weeks notice to the HR department. And then a couple hours later, the same day, went into what was soon to be his, former office, and, killed a couple of people on the way in, and then shot like 10 more once he actually got in there. And, what I was saying in my last video is that I was kind of hoping they'd, eventually tell us what was in the man's resignation letter, because I was hoping it would offer some sort of clue or something. And in the days since then, what I've heard is that, he said he was, moving on from his, city engineering position with Virginia Beach, due to undisclosed personal reasons. And, witnesses and, all that knew the guy said that they, thought he was an okay fella and thought he was getting on, okay with everybody. But, and I know this sounds kind of like a conspiracy theory way of thinking here, but, I have my doubts about that, because don't necessarily go into a place and start, blasting away for, no apparent reason. And from what I've heard and read and all of that, I mean, it's one of those things where really there's nobody saying that there were like voices in his head telling him to do it, or there were no conflicts with anybody at work, or nothing going on in his personal life that might have caused this. You know, See, and the reason I'm bringing these things up is because there's like there's got to be multiple. See, the way I look at it, there's multiple things we can and should do to bring down all these the number of instances like this. And there's like and it doesn't necessarily all have to do with what kind of firearms and accessories are in the hands of civilians. Because granted, I'm still in the school of thought that there are certain firearms and accessories that don't necessarily need to be in civilian hands. But that's not the only thing we need to look at here. You know, um, because it's one of those things where, even if he'd had, just the 45 or whatever, the 45s or whatever kind of gun they were, with, just the normal clips instead of the, high capacity ones the articles say he had. There's still got to be a reason why he went back to the office and, went all Shooty McBang Bang on the place, you know, um, and, you know, maybe if we started, you know, uh, considering, the common elements in past cases like this and, like, did things to, you know, and, like, tried to find, things like that in situations where it might yet happen and, like, did things to prevent that, maybe we wouldn't have quite so many of them. Uh, and if I seem to be stumbling over things right now, part of the reason is that I can use my own workplace as an example for that, and well, I'm kind of hesitant to do that because I've got my own self interests to look out for here because I kind of want to keep having that job, and I don't want to make it any more difficult to find another one if I have to. But at the same time, this is something I think needs to be talked about a little bit, even if this is kind of a stupid way of going about it. The thing is, there are, it's one of those things where there are, things going on where I work that could potentially lead to this sort of, lead to, this kind of thing happening. And I'd rather it didn't because, well, like I was saying in the last video, I, am putting JM Tries on, on kind of a indefinite hiatus because of, obvious health issues that show up in the video here. And just to explain that a little further, I'm 5'4" and weigh 350 pounds, which means I have, probably more than my fair share of preventable death hanging over me just because of my own lifestyle choices. And, I'd rather not, have more of that hanging over me because of, things that, might turn violent at work and, wind up causing myself and others to be hurt and or killed needlessly. And it comes down to, well, essentially, there's like maybe one guy, not gonna necessarily name names or, say too much, you know, on the assumption that I haven't already. But, it's one of those things where the one guy that, makes me worry the most about this kind of thing, is the sort of fella that'll, he'll, like, there's especially one, there's this dude who's a manager there in particular that he likes to, get, all touchy feely with, and, he'll talk dirty to the guy. and stuff like that. And it's one of those things where if he says and or does that kind of thing to the wrong person, well, next thing here's Shooty McBang Bang coming to you know coming to lay things down for us. Um, and a lot of people are going to wind up worse off than they need to be because of it. Or the same fella, they're or see, it's one of those things where it's a food service job, so there's a lot of a lot of plastic bags and plastic wrappers and all that kind of stuff, and he'll like if he likes someone, he'll blow one up, quietly sneak up behind him and pop the damn thing and happily proclaim that there I shot you. uh you know if he does that once too often to the wrong guy, it won't be a plastic bag, it'll be an actual gun, and there I shot you is gonna mean that somebody's laying there with a nice big bullet hole in them, which is not necessarily something I think many of us are looking forward to. uh you know but if things keep going on the way they're going, um you know where it I can't help but wonder how long it's going to be before we're hearing these news stories about how there's 5 people dead and 3 wounded at a Wendy's in Sioux Falls because somebody brought their guns in and decided that it's time for bullets for everybody. you know um and I have to wonder what we can do to prevent this, especially considering that preventing it doesn't necessarily mean taking guns and or ammo and or accessories away from people. Now, like I was saying a couple of minutes ago, I'm still in the school of thought that yeah, there are some weapons and some accessories that don't necessarily belong in the hands of civilians. But the reason I'm coming at it from this other angle here is that you know it's a lot like my own weight and health issues, in that there's more than one thing I can do to correct the problem, and that a lot of these things are stackable. And you know like like if I really want to get myself healthy and in better shape, I can eat less, I can exercise more, I can I can take fiber and vitamins and that kind of stuff. And like the more of those things I do, the bigger the benefit will be. You know, uh, and I think something similar applies to the violence problem in this country. I mean, sure we can do something about all the weapons around, but at the same time we need to make mental health something that is more accessible and less stigmatized. Because it's not just the shooters that are having the problems here. It's other folks, and we're all having effects on one another. Because none of this is happening in a vacuum here, and we need to figure out what exactly we're gonna do here, just so I mean, there's it's gonna be enough of a see. It's like one of the points I was gonna make here is that it's an embarrassing enough thing for me to have to admit that I'm a morbidly obese man in his 40s who, works at a burger joint for a living. And it's not going to make anything, things any better if I, wind up on the floor because of my own lifestyle choices. But, I'd rather have that get me than, wind up getting shot on the job, and we need to, get all this figured out somehow. Uh, I mean, if I really thought I knew what the answer was, I'd, try to get more into that too. But I really don't. So, that's kind of where I am on all of this. And I think it comes back to this whole, inventing situations thing here, where we're going to have to like start doing things like that in order to, get things sorted here. You know, um, and hopefully we'll, be able to, you know, reinvent and reconsider and, get all this figured out just so, these crazy things don't keep happening. Uh, but really, I just, needed to sit and ramble and like just say these things, and maybe saying them on YouTube wasn't the smartest thing for me to have done, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway because, well, it's like so many things in life. We got to start somewhere, and I guess this is as good a place as any. So maybe we'll get this figured out somehow, some way, and things will start getting better. I just hope I get a chance to, regret this in a way that isn't too terribly bad for me. But anyway, I'm gonna throw the dice on this, and hopefully I'll have something that's less, confusing and, less rambling and, less, you know, whatever this is, talk about next time. And hopefully I'll, actually be able to, have a decent schedule coming up too. But anyway, I think I'm gonna, end the video for now, and just say hopefully I'll have, something for you next Tuesday night or Wednesday morning because that's, excuse me, when I intend to be doing these things, now on a more regular basis, and we'll see where all this takes us. So until next time, folks, I'll see you when I see you. Have a good, however long. See you later.